Today's episode is going to hit especially hard for any entrepreneur who's ever felt like their business was running them rather than the other way around. Our guest, Leslie Hassler, is the founder of Your Biz Rules and a true force in the world of small business transformation. With nearly 2 decades of entrepreneurial experience and a deep background in finance, marketing, and leadership, Leslie doesn't just help businesses grow, she helps them grow with intention. The kind of growth that creates time, space, and freedom, not just bigger to-do lists. She's worked with business owners through her books, resources, and consulting to unlock consistent profits, implement smarter systems, and build businesses that support the life the business owner actually wants to live. And while her resume is impressive as an author and speaker, it's her ability to simplify the complex and bring balance to chaos that really sets her apart. Now, before we dive in, I want to remind you that time is running out this year for you to be able to work with us to develop a custom tax strategy. If you're listening to this because you want to grow your business and you're ready to start keeping more of what you earn, we'd love to help. Head to vitalstrategies.com/tax, where our team can work with you directly to create a custom tax strategy that aligns with your goals and helps you build real, lasting wealth. All right, let's get into this conversation with Leslie Hassler. Leslie, I am so excited for you to join us here today. We are going to really get into the discussion around having a fractional C-suite and what that means for bringing that into our growing business that's looking to scale and the importance of that. So, Leslie Hassler, thank you so much for joining us here today. I think this is going to be a fantastic conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So you've literally written the book on this topic, which I think is fantastic, and we'll get to that in a minute and point
Yeah.
people to that at the end. But I'd like to just start off and think about the problems that our listeners are facing. I think the first thing is that the business is profitable, but growth
Mm,
feels chaotic, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm having to hire and I've got all these new problems and building systems, and it's like, man, I've lost track of how my team's performing, and there's just we can start to see these bottlenecks show up
hmm
in our lives and start to slow everything down. And then I also can feel stuck in the business. Like, it's exhausting. I feel like I just have to work harder to keep the machine moving, and I can't take vacation. And that's no fun. I don't want to sacrifice my life or my health. One of the things that we talk a lot about is, over my shoulder, it says, make life great. We really want to build businesses and build wealth that helps us live an optimized life versus having more zeros in our bank account. And then I think the last problem, the philosophical problem, is entrepreneurs shouldn't have to choose between, I'll say, scaling and sanity. Profitability and peace should go hand in hand. So I'm thankful that you're here and we get to talk more about this today.
Yeah, we've got so much to unpack with what you just shared. It's the classic growth problem and
Mm-hmm.
everything that you talk about, especially when you're like the philosophical problem of it all. I think that's what we're trying to tackle with Scaling Rich as a philosophy of business growth, scalability, but also one that improves your quality of life, not detracts from it or declines it
Mm-hmm.
as you go through your entrepreneurial journey. So I'm excited to see where we're going to go with all this.
Yeah, this is going to be good. Can you give us a little bit of your background and how you really developed your firm and your process, and then we can start to dig into the plan to fix some of these things we identified.
Sure. I have been an entrepreneur for 18 years. I came into entrepreneurship as an accidental entrepreneur, which means that on Wednesday, I found out I wasn't going to have a job on Monday and I
Mm.
opened up a company. Yay. And
Good for
that
you.
while I did a little bit of prep work, is 4 days of prep work, right? So
Hmm.
I think that's how a lot of people come into business. We come into business because we're good at something we do, and we have a high freedom dream. We want that ability to control our destiny, control our success, have some say over our life, and that's what brings us into it. But 18 years in business, I have seen a lot of different things. Have gone through 08 and 09. That was really fun in my first business. Your Biz Rules is actually my third technical business, but the
Hmm.
one in the middle, the second business, it was like, I think I killed it in about 9 months.
Yeah.
It wasn't a viable thing. So I say 2.5 businesses, right?
Yeah.
The first two attempts in business, and the first business, look, we went up, we went down, we came back up, right? It
Hmm.
was successful by all means, but it sucked my soul dry. I
Hmm.
often describe that business as a prison, not a playground.
Yeah.
And it At that time, I didn't have the answers I have today. If I could tell, if the then me or today me could go back and tell the then me what to do, it might be a totally different story, but then I might not be here. So I'm exactly where I need to be for our conversation today. But it's entrepreneurship is such a journey
Hmm.
that I don't think we're ever really done learning. The minute that you feel like you've arrived is actually probably the minute you're going to stop growing
Right.
as a company. And so I think I want to say that because it is part of the battle. It is part of that philosophical problem that you talked about of, not having to sacrifice one thing for the other.
Hmm.
That gets us in a little bit of a problem. And part of that is how we're choosing to grow business, the rules that we're putting around it, and what we're accepting as normal anymore. I
Hmm.
think the hustle and grind has led a lot of people astray. And you and I were chit chatting,
Yeah,
beforehand, and we're like, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "It's a full day." And you're like, "It's a full day."
it
I
is.
totally understand where you're coming from,
Hmm.
and that is a good signal. But is it going to collapse me? And is it going to be something that is such day in and day out that it turns into burnout?
Hmm.
And that's all about how you approach growth and scalability.
Yeah.
So there's still, growth and scalability are very different. Knowing and understanding what they do in a business and knowing and understanding how to manage them actually is a really good entree to managing your overwhelm, your burnout, how it's going to deplete you as a
Hmm.
resource as you continue to evolve in your business.
I love this. So I want to touch on a few of these things that
Yeah.
we've talked about, because one of the things that we like to discuss is when I think about stress. Stress is good. Okay. Let's take work out of it for a second. But
Yeah.
like let's think about somebody that's training to run a marathon. Okay. I don't like running very much, but if I were to run a marathon, I have to put stress on my body, right?
Yeah.
Like if I tried to get up the day of the marathon and go run the thing, very low likelihood I'm going to finish it if I didn't train. And so
Mhm.
that training looks like I've got to condition myself. I got to put the right amount of stress on my body so I can recover and then show up the next day and continue to perform. And I'm going to
Yep.
get better in that scenario. Now, too little training is sloth, right? And there's no stress in that, and there's no growth. Okay.
Mm.
Too much training, too much stress is burnout, right?
Mm.
And so I think that as entrepreneurs, we need to try to figure out how to live in that sweet spot. And you touched
Yeah.
on it in the context of like, if we stop growing, that's not good. We're probably not going to plateau. There'll be just a slow death in
Mhm.
that scenario. And so I'm excited to get into this discussion about growing versus scaling, because I
Mm.
think there's a level of growth that happens, and people might think they're scaling, but what they're doing is they're just working really hard, and
Yeah.
to get to the next level, they just are like, I'm just going to have to do more of what I'm currently doing to get this thing going versus,
Yeah.
oh, hey, I need to build a system and a process and bring in the right team to be able to help us get to where we want to go. Because let's just use an extreme example of Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
So Amazon, right? Like he started this thing in his garage, shipping some books. And if Jeff was responsible for getting all the books out the door, like
Yeah.
clearly Amazon has a limit. Now, Amazon has grown into this behemoth, right? Like they
Yeah.
are shipping things like I can order something in the morning and it, can get to my door by the afternoon. And that's not Jeff's fault, right? Like it's
Mhm.
Jeff's fault, but Jeff's not delivering the thing. So,
Right.
so that's a business that figured out how to scale and not just
Yeah.
grow. So, yes, I'm not sure where we want to start, but I'm looking forward to getting into I'll say the foundational pieces of like how do I go from this business that is, you know, killing me, right? That I love the idea of scaling rich and doing it in the context of really having a life outside of my business. Like I think that it's super exciting. So where do we start? What is the foundation of this
Yeah,
thing for
let's start with growth, scalability, and you touched on this keyword recovery.
you? Hmm.
Recovery. So let's talk about these as three stages that happen in a business. Um, and that happen in a cycle almost, if you will.
Hmm.
So growth for us and how we define it, very traditionally definition is it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every dollar I invest in my business, I'm probably going to get a dollar back. These tend to be the foundations of the business, the things you've got to get in place in order to get to critical mass. So it's that element of the somewhat staff, but it's also some systems and some processes. And, do you have a marketing message, and can you produce sales, and do the clients come in reliably? Those are all growth foundational type of things that you have to figure out. That's stage one growth, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
At some point in time, then you enter into a mode of scalability. Scalability is a bit more about a one to many. So for every dollar you're going to invest in your business, you would expect hundreds, if not thousands of dollars back at a whole different scale than you would in growth. Now, scalability, this is where we're going to talk about capacity. We're going to talk about efficiency, productivity. How are we going to get all that's possible for us at this moment? And I want to kind of share a client story to illustrate this.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a client come in 4 years ago. They came in and did a business audit, something we do with every new client. And in doing the audit, I saw like, okay, your business is right about 500,000 revenue. That's a feat for a lot of people to get. That's a really major milestone in the business. And I was like, but I honestly think you could be at 2 million. And I don't think we'd have to hire. I think we'd have to change just a few things, be a little smarter where we're putting our time. But I see 2 million in potential. And the client just kind of laughed. She's like, no way, not happening.
Yeah.
She's like, I can't get past 500,000. How in the world would I get to 2 million? I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure 2 million. And so as we're talking about this conversation, she did not believe it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
I said, wouldn't it be fun to play? Like, are you just willing to play with me? And let's see what we can do. And she said, okay. And I was like, now, if you're going to play the game, you got to do what I ask.
Yeah.
Just do what I ask. I'll explain, but play the game with me. She goes, okay. So within 9 months, we took that business from 500,000 to 2 million. Next year, she's like, not going to happen again. I was like, I don't know. Let's play 2 million. And the next year, she's like, okay, maybe I'm ready to grow again. I was like, phenomenal. What's the number? What number are we playing to? She's like, I don't know, 3 or 4. I was like, phenomenal. We were at 3 to 4 million in another year. So there is this, that to me is scalability. It is being able to flip a switch and then get the exponential growth. A lot of people, especially if you've been in the area that you're at for a while, chances are you've got some scalability. Now, recovery, that's that I like to say growth and scalability are like dance partners. Sometimes growth leads, sometimes scalability leads, but eventually the two dance partners need to go get some punch, need to take a song out, right? It's that rest and recovery. This is the step we miss, is rest and recovery. Now, it doesn't have to last a long time. It could be as short as 2 weeks, if that's your working speed. Maybe it's a little bit longer. We've had some teams where we've taken them through that kind of exponential change in growth and scalability, and you can just see that everyone's breathing hard. And the owner and I will look and we're like, it's time for recovery. How long do you think that's going to be? I'm like, it may be as much as 6 months based on what we're seeing in the people. And we're going to allow that team to recover, to regain their energy, to find their footing, right? And then be able to take off again. And so I think these 3 phases you have to really be thinking about. I mean, if you think about the traditional S curve, they're kind of built into that. But I don't want any decline happening during these phases, but it's more of a flow going through them and allowing them to happen. I think most times we try to control because we're tired and we're burning out. So we constrict instead of allowing, because in our brains, that's what feels safe. But like you said, if you're not growing, it's not so much that you're going to be plateauing and staying where you are. You're going to be in this slippery slope down. So we have to balance those 3 things. And I think the conversation, to your point, most people think they're talking scalability when they're actually talking growth. Hint, growth won't get you out of cash flow issues if you're having cash flow issues. It just happens to create more of them, unless you have some financial strategies to support. But there's these little nuances to growing and scaling that I don't think you see until you've worked with 10, 20, 40, 50 businesses, and you're like, here it is. The signals are loud and clear. We are here.
Yeah, Leslie, this is so good. And I want to touch on something you said and get your opinion on it. Because I think there's 2 pieces to this. I think belief is really important. If
Mm,
I don't believe I can generate more than $500,000 revenue, guess what? I'm not going to. So I think beliefs is an important part. And then I think along with belief comes inertia, right? Like a body in motion stays in motion and a body in rest stays in rest. And once we're
yeah,
sort of moving on a path, it's really can be challenging to change that and to start to, I'll say scale it. We have to break out of our old molds, whether that's where we're currently at or the path we've been on. We've got to start doing something different to get us there. And so, yeah, I'd like to just hear you touch on those two pieces. Like, how do we change because I think these two things can tie together.
yeah,
I've got a belief on how much revenue I can make, and then I also have a belief on how business should be done. And
yeah.
it's like those two things can keep me stuck sort of in this rut that I'm in.
Yeah. Well, I think the first part is, and you are completely true. I had somebody, a speaking engagement, go, "What's the biggest problem entrepreneurs have?" And I was like, "Wow, what a loaded question." And I was like, "Oh, simple. Between our ears,
Mm-hmm.
it's the mind. Whether you believe it, as Henry Ford said, whether you believe you're right or not, you're right. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of that instance.
Yeah.
No matter what you believe, beliefs repeated over time become truths. Truths repeated over time become reality. And so we will talk ourselves into our own reality any day of the week. Now, the pleasure of that is we can work in reverse
Mm-hmm.
and get a new reality if what our reality isn't serving us. But I do believe belief is the only thing I can't give. Like, it is the only thing I can't have more of for a client than they have for themselves,
Yeah.
because it is the single determinant of whether or not there's success. And we've just seen that play out time and
Mm-hmm.
time and time again.
Yeah.
So I do believe, I agree with you in the belief factor. You have to be working on your belief. You have to be working on the possibility and believing in possibility, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
because it's only at that point in time you're going to continue to try or continue to learn. But I want to talk about learning again in just a second.
Yeah.
I think the next part of what you're talking about is the curse of success, if you will. Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, when they're studying high performers and why do high performers have such a hard time being successful again. It's because they have a hard time breaking down
Mm-hmm.
what got them to where they are. Now, that plays true in a business all the stinking time.
Mm-hmm.
All the stinking time. And everyone, we all have to go through it. I go through it, you go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody goes through it. It's just depending about where it is, what element of the business it shows up into. So I think this is one of the big mindset shifts that we have to start understanding. So much of the old paradigm of business is about crossing a finish line, beating somebody else to the end, being first place. All right. So much of what we're geared to is that kind of thinking. Now, I'm not saying everybody should get a participation award either.
Mm-hmm.
What I am saying, though, is that entrepreneurs universally have this habit of setting a finish line, whatever that finish line is, getting to within 6 inches of it, and then moving the finish line. So
Mm-hmm.
you never actually get across. So it is that moment, and then if you do happen to get across, you're done, right? You've learned all there is to know. New paradigm of business is based in this reality that change is happening at such a exponential, almost uncontrollable rate.
Mm-hmm.
2020, for instance, we know there was a lot of change, but I'm just going to talk in digital transformation. The amount of digital technology transformation that happened in that year was worth 5 previous years. It's a
Wow.
lot of stinking change,
Yeah.
right? That's a lot of change to go through. That is both the unspoken truth that a lot of people brile against right now is the amount of change, but it is also your key to scaling your business in a way you never thought was possible and
Mm-hmm.
at a rate you never thought was possible. And traditional old paradigm, if you're going to grow 14.4% year over year for 5 years, that's when you double. You can double in 6 months. We've attached so much binding,
Mm-hmm.
time bounding, deadlines and timelines to our success when we're in an age to where that all goes away. And I'm kind of driving my team a little crazy with this. I'm like, look, I know where we're going to be in 18 months. Here's clarity. Here's where it is. But the next major goal is here. And people
Mhm.
will go, well, is that in 5 years? I went, no, it's not bound to time.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
bound to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so important because I see it in my business. I see it
Yeah.
in our clients' businesses. And the we go through these curves where we grow and then we get to a point, and exactly like you were saying, the we need to retool to be able to be built to go to the next level. And that retooling piece, that's where all of the change happens and it becomes uncomfortable. And I was having a discussion with a peer of mine. He's in the mergers and acquisition space. And he
Yeah.
was like, we like to bring the change in like a 3-month period and just make it really painful and get it all over with it at one period of time. Because if we stretch it out to 9 months, people just get sort of worn out.
Yeah.
When they're in change mode, it's like, okay, cool. Like,
Yeah.
here we go. Let's embrace it and get moving. So I think that's fantastic. If today's conversation is hitting home, if you're realizing that it's time to stop guessing and start getting strategic with your business finances, then this is your moment. At Vital Wealth, we specialize in helping entrepreneurs build custom tax strategies that not only save money, but also create momentum for growth. Whether you're scaling fast or stabilizing for the long haul, your tax plan shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be a profit-driving asset. Go to vitalstrategies.com/tax to connect with our team. We'll help you uncover missed opportunities, plus plug hidden leaks and structure your business to maximize every dollar you earn. Again, that's vitalstrategies.com/tax, where strategy meets simplicity and your wealth starts working for you. Because I'm looking forward to, okay, cool. Like, we have to embrace change. How do we bring that process into our organization in a way that, we're all on board with?
So I think we do have to change our language around things.
Hmm.
So instead of it being that finish line, what if it was a journey? What if we knew the ultimate destination that it was going to be, but we understood that we've got Waze or Google Maps on, for the business, and there's your systems and your processes and your guardrails. But at some point in time, we might hit a traffic jam and need to get off the freeway. Now, I don't know too many people that get upset about getting off the freeway and not having to sit there for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, think about how married we are we're so attached to the how of something that when we might have to get off the freeway because there's a traffic jam, we get angry about getting off the freeway, even if it's more profitable, quicker, less work. We're so married to the how. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think we have to change our language. I like thinking about entrepreneurship and growing business as a journey, about the things we're going to learn, about the things we're going to improve. I also think we have to, it's so funny, we had two of our staff members were on vacation last week. I was out for half a week. I come back and my COO is having meetings, and I just popped in today on it. I was like, hey, I need to ask a quick question. And she goes, hey, the team didn't even tell you, but this went wrong. And I was like, how phenomenal that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I was like, what went wrong? I was like, oh, you should have told me, because I would have calmed your fear, because it's all relative. Like, there's very little that we're going to be able to do that's going to blow up the business because we have guardrails. So we can change our conversation about making mistakes. We can change our conversation about learnings.
Mm-hmm.
We can allow for things to take the time that they're going to take, whether it's 3 minutes or 30 days. So I think that's number one, is changing that conversation, which means we have to change the culture.
Mm-hmm.
We have to find other ways that we're deriving value from doing some things. Checking off a to-do list, does that really produce value? I'm not sure, but a lot of people are addicted to it because it feels like achieving.
Yeah.
So we really have to think about things in a little bit of different way. And sometimes that's a little more abstract thinking. Sometimes it means just changing your KPIs. Other times it's helping people understand the value that they're bringing in within an organization. And that includes the owner, I have to tell you. And it's using those things to our advantage so that we can take advantage of things like the exponential rate of change that's happening right now. How can we grow this business? How can we bust out of industry norms? I like to say the industry norms. You've heard this story, I'm sure, about the wife that cut off the leg of ham to go into the oven, and the husband's like, "Why are you doing that?" Have you heard this story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell it though, because I think it's really good for our listeners.
So she's like, "I don't know." She goes to her mother. She asks her mom. Her mom goes, "I don't know." She's like, "Let's call grandma." They ask grandma, "Why did we cut off the end of the ham to put it in the oven?" He goes, "Oh, because of my first oven was too small for the ham, and I just kept doing it."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's industry
Exactly. Yeah.
standards. It's just one person that got up and did something, and another person said, "Hey, I don't have a better idea, so I'm going to do that."
hmm
I think we
Yeah.
have to start challenging those.
Yeah, and I think about your point on culture and how important that is and how that ties back to journey. And I think about the people that we bring into our organization. And when we're taking everybody through the process, we communicate over and over again. Our job is to put you in a position to thrive.
Mm,
Okay. And we want you to learn and grow and develop and have this sort of arc on your career. And if you get to a point where you're stuck, you're obligated to go do what's in your best interest and find something
yeah.
else. And
Yeah.
we'll cheer you on along the way because we feel like if we create this culture of developing people, people will want to be in our organization. They'll be showing up sort of ready to work because they're like, hey, I know I'm going to end up better than I started here. And so I think about that. And if we put the employee in a position to thrive,
Yeah.
they're enjoying their work, they're producing for the client, which is great. And when the client's happy and we have profitable work going on, then we're doing well as an organization as well. So I think all of those things seem to align and really fit into that journey piece of the equation. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, let's all grow and develop together.
Yeah.
And I like removing it makes me a little nervous because I do like to grow and have a deadline and things get done in the time frame you have to get them done
Yeah.
in, is I don't know if that's the Pareto principle or there's something along those
Yeah.
lines that sort of states that to be true. So I'm like, well, I like a
Absolutely.
deadline because it sort of
Yeah.
moves us along. But yeah, I really this conversation around like a journey and culture is resonating. So um,
Well, even with the deadline concept, think of it about the forest and the trees. So,
mhm,
can you see the forest for the trees kind of thing? And there's a Japanese phrase that also triggers in my mind when I talk about this about bamboo, which is firmly rooted enough, but flexible to sway in the wind.
mhm,
And there's that dichotomy, right? That's what the forest and the trees I think about. So on a forest level, on a tree level,
mhm,
or rather the tree level, yeah, sure, have deadlines, right? Because
mhm,
whatever you need positive tension to create motion. So create deadlines, that's positive tension. But the
mhm,
forest, right? That's maybe where you're not so time bound in there because you're time bound at this micro level that you can allow the macro level to move at what speed it wants to move.
mhm.
So maybe that's another way to think about it because believe me, we're deadline driven
Yeah,
in the office, but it's just because we know you're going to, if you have 10 hours to do something, you're going to take 10 hours. If you've
right.
got 4, you're going to take 4. So why
Yeah.
not do it in 4?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think there's something to call them habits, consistent
Mm,
activity
mhm.
versus a goal. And
Yeah.
I think about a goal might be a desire where a habit or activity or process is almost certainly going to get me to that goal. And I use let's just go back to my marathon example, right?
Yeah.
Like I can tell you with a pretty high degree of certainty if I follow a training plan where I'm running 3 or 4 times a week, getting proper nutrition, rest, hydration, I'm going to accomplish my goal. And so it's like, now it might, there could be a setback along the way, right? I could get
Yeah.
injured. It could be the marathon gets canceled because there's a storm or something along those lines and it pushes it out. And those things happen, but I'm still prepared to, accomplish the goal when the time frame comes. And so I think that's maybe an important piece too, is like getting dialed in on those little activities that we can just show up and do on a regular basis. And it gets us to, our outcome. And I've heard this saying and I love it. One of my mentors was, I'm 25 years to an overnight success. People would be like, how did you do it? And he's like, well, I showed up for
5
25
years.
years and it all sort of worked out. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's good. So, very good. Okay. So, what's next in our process of scaling and growing and sort of developing our business?
I think the way I would say, and it's almost Well, I'm going to put it this. I think the name of the game is more about profitability than it is
Mhm.
about necessarily revenue. Sure, you need some revenue to generate some profit, but profitability, if your eyes there, you can be profitable at a smaller number. Now, earlier in our conversation, you made that mention about, choosing a smaller business for a higher quality of life, or maybe you've got multiple demands on your time. Most of us at our age typically are having a younger generation to care for and an older generation to care for.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, caring for the older generation takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. We've done it in our family. It's a high priority. We'll do it
Mhm.
again. But the reality of it is that if I give here, I don't always have as much to give in my business.
Mhm.
And it's a balancing act. So maybe in those periods, I prioritize something other than growth and revenue. And I'm looking at profitability because I
Mhm.
don't want to like abandon my business. That's not what my concept of it is. But it is this whole other emphasis on profitability.
Mhm.
I did some research and I was like, okay, what is good profit? Because I think we all talk about what's good profitability.
Yeah.
And the industry standard definition is 10 to 20%. Now, I'm not going to knock profitability. You have enough
Mhm.
of a volume and great, 10% of 10 million, that's nothing to,
Mm.
laugh about.
Right.
However, my question is, why can't it be 30 to 50%
Mhm.
profitability? And how can we be building businesses to be at the 30 to 50% profitability, both to the benefit of the owner and to the team and to the longevity of the business? When you are placing so much more emphasis on that, you're able to do things like build cash reserves. You
Mhm.
get to come to people like you and help us save a lot of money. I tell people all day long, I make you a ton of money,
Mhm.
but I'm not your tax guy. I'm not your tax girl. I don't know the
Yeah.
tax code. Our clients live all over the nation. And let me tell you,
Mhm.
it's really different
Yeah.
state to state to state to state. But what we're good at is making you money.
Yeah.
And what a great choice to be able to get to go mitigate that tax.
Yeah.
But the truth is that is our focus
Mhm.
is I am looking for the optimal level of profitability for the business, not necessarily for the industry, which I think is really interesting because we've had product-based businesses, manufacturing clients, services clients, and to see that profitability number go from 5 or 10% to 30 or 40 or even 54 at a high level of revenue, that is very successful. That's an operationally efficient machine,
Yeah.
right? That you can do so much good with. And that's where profit planning comes into play and things like profit first
Yeah.
and other strategies that come in there. But I do think we have to change the conversation. I could care less in some ways about revenue. There's
Mhm.
zeros in my book, but I do care about what comes all the way down to the bottom line because that's what creates impact.
Yeah, Leslie, this you're preaching to the choir here because I will have people be like, "Yeah, we're at 4 million," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Is that bottom line or top line?" Because
yeah,
if you're 4 million top line, I've seen this. I've seen $4 million of top line and zero profit, and it's
yep.
like, why would you put yourself through the hassle of owning a business that has no profit? You're maybe taking a wage, but you've got all this stress, all this hassle. You're one of the
Mhm.
lowest paid employees in or lowest paid stakeholders in the
Yeah,
entire equation. We should fix that or you should stop doing it, you know? And so I really do appreciate that. And I also think there's something to, we have these conversations regularly with um, growing the business,
mhm,
because there's a level of, depending on where you want to go and what your goals are. And I like to be intentional with these goals because sometimes
yep,
we can get caught up with that like finish line up and to the right. Like I want to get to
yep,
$100 million exit. I'm like,
yeah,
for what purpose? If your kids
yeah.
don't know you
I
and
love
you're on
it.
your fourth wife, like that's no good.
Yeah,
And so I think having those conversations around like, what do you, let's understand what's important to you personally and make sure
mhm,
that the business goals align with that, because sometimes it can be like, I want to be, spend time with my young kids,
yeah,
and then I see you over here working 120 hours in your business. It's like those things aren't matching up, and you're already bringing home a few $1,000,000 a year. Like, let's maybe figure out some systems, processes, uh, so we don't have to keep living that way. So I think There's so many different directions this could go off of. This is we don't have enough time. Maybe we'll have you back and we'll do it again. But so can we talk through like maybe how to bring in, what is the fractional C-suite model? How can I incorporate this idea into my business? Because I think I love this. When I think about, man, if I had to go hire a CFO, that's expensive. If I had to go hire a COO, I'm not there yet, but
Yeah.
man, I love this fractional piece. And we're seeing this in the marketplace in general. Like my IT
Yeah.
is fractional. I can
Yeah.
bring in really high powered IT for a fraction of the cost. My marketing, I can do, instead of bringing it in-house and trying to hire everybody, I can hire a firm that has all the capability. And I
Yeah.
think the same thing is true in our sort of financial and leadership models as well. So can you talk a little bit about how this can really help us unlock our capacity?
I would love to. So that's exactly what we say at Your Biz Rules. We're basically your fractional C-suite before you can afford to hire all of that leadership. And with that, we tend to be with our clients for quite a few years, several years. And what we have found is that every business needs some C-suite leadership, some support, because the owner is awesome. The owner is intelligent and great and does a really good job, but the owner is one person with one mind. And usually that one mind has about 45 different demands upon it. So
Mm-hmm.
you need another set of eyes. What we have started to see as we've been doing this and serving our clients this way is that for the most part, most every business has one major need. And I'll say that tends to be financial or operations or
Mm-hmm.
HR. Those tend to be the big three that they'll come into. But every major need that you have is not just about operations. So if it's an operational need, it's not really just about operations.
Mm-hmm.
Usually there's a financial component.
Sure.
Usually there's a team component. Usually you're seeing the daisy chain of the web. Especially if you've been in business for a while, your problems aren't necessarily Googleable. You can't Google that answer anymore
Mm-hmm.
because it's become so complicated or intricate or interconnected. So by our firm is able to basically serve the major need, but then when you need X, we just bring in the other teammate and they work with you for that period of time to get the work done. And we have financials always running in the background because, I already said, we focus on
Mm-hmm.
the profit.
Yeah.
We focus on the change and the growth and results, and we need to be tracking the money in order to be able to do that and to pay for all those other things that growth and scalability is going to demand for us. And so what we've seen is it is number one, amazingly collaborative. We're partners with our clients. And sometimes I'll have a client that will say, I think sometimes you care for about my business more than I might in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. And
Yeah.
you're like, well, yeah, because I don't have the emotional baggage. I
Right.
don't have the emotion around an issue. We can look at it strategically and say, is this good for the business? Is it good for the owner? Is it good for the team? And then find the right solution in order to be able to do that. But if we have somebody, I'm thinking like of one client where we have a fractional CFO, and then now we've been developing their team to be able to bring in leads into the business. And now we're going into the operational space, and we're implementing like Monday.com with
Mm-hmm.
that team to get them to be a little bit more of a central hub and get greater efficiencies. So it is that way that we're able to ebb and flow with the needs of the business. And for the most part, we can capture it all with one-stop shop. And if we need outside expertise, which I'm not going to do your social media, my team
Mm-hmm.
won't do your social.
Yeah.
We're going to partner with those
Mm-hmm.
companies so that you're getting a greater efficiency, you're getting a greater product at the end of the day. So we have found it to be infinitely fun. We like the variety, but we like really starting to see the change that happens in our clients' businesses because now they can grow faster, but
Mm-hmm.
they can also grow more profitable because we tend to represent, a fraction if you were going to hire four C-suite people
Right.
or a fraction of that, right? And so it plays into everything we've been talking about and keeping a business nimble and keeping it profitable, keeping the cash flow flowing, because we don't know what's going to happen next month. We don't know what's going to happen next year, but we can set up the business to be fiscally strong enough to weather whatever is going to come
Yeah.
and to take advantage of the opportunities that come shortly after the shock.
Sure.
We all
Yeah.
have the shock, but honestly, there's a shock and then there's opportunity, and you need cash a lot of times to take advantage of the opportunity that comes after the shock. So that's really the resiliency that we're looking to build into companies. And I think one of the, long-term benefits of working with us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I want to just highlight one of the things that you brought up, and it really all ties back to this profitability, but understanding your financials and
Yeah.
how that ties back to your operations, because it's really hard to make operational decisions if I don't know where I'm at on the financial map, so to speak.
Yep.
What my metrics are for everything from gross profit to my net income as the business owner, utilization rates, all these other things. Like, there's so many factors that come in there, and it's like we can start to glean that data from our financial statements, that if we don't have that information clear, it's really hard. And we work with a lot of very successful business owners in lots of different arenas, and there's not one that shows up and goes, yeah, I don't have my books up to date. I couldn't tell you how we're doing this year. They all know. They all
Yeah.
know how they're doing. They all know where they're at according to their forecast. And
Yeah.
that's another thing, a forecast. All of those pieces are just are really important to be able to run the business well. And I think that can be hard, because I see, the financials go through this evolution as well. It's like, you might be the bookkeeper, right? When you
Yeah.
first get started, and then you might outsource to a bookkeeper, and then you might bring in a staff accountant, and then, it's just been happening a certain way. And if we
Yeah.
think about, really the value of our business, because at the end of the day, whether we're interested in selling our business or not, super strong cash flow to the bottom line makes our business more valuable.
Yep.
So it's like, let's just focus on that cash flow piece and a valuable business, and then we can decide someday down the road if we want to sell it. Like, we can do that. It's an option,
Yep.
versus if it's there's
Yeah.
just no way. So this has been so good. Leslie, I know we are running short on time. Is there anything else we should talk about before we dig into some of the opportunities that people have to connect with you and learn more?
There's so much, but like you said,
Mhm.
we would probably have to have a whole nother session, because it's the businesses, as you grow, you get a little bit more complicated, you get a little
Mhm.
more enriched, if you will. And so I think there's so many aspects in what we've talked about. Is you're never really done at the end of the day. If you can really adopt a learning attitude and learning
Mhm.
culture, you're likely going to find your next opportunity versus being closed to it. And I think that alone could open up so many people's doors to something even more beautiful than what they may have today. So we'll
Yeah.
have to come back more, but I'll leave you
Yeah.
with those parting
Yeah,
words.
that's fantastic. And I think when we think about learning, one of the best places for people to go is, you've given us a free resource,
Hmm.
yourbizrules.com. So
Yeah.
that's your YOURBIZ rules.com / vital.
Yes.
And you've got a free gift for us there. I'll leave that as a surprise for people to check out. And then
Yeah.
I think they should also buy your book. And then there's an opportunity to, if people are like, I'm ready, I need what Leslie has, I need to sort of figure out this operations finance piece, I need to get my business to really grow and scale to the next level. There's opportunities to connect with you to work more and just learn more about everything you've got going on. So your current book is First This, Then That. And then I think you've got another book, Scaling Rich, that's on its way, that people can also get on the wait list for to sign up, or maybe even pre-order. So we will
So
have links to all of that in the show notes. But this has been wonderful, and just a few things for you to listen to as the entrepreneur to think about. You know, if we don't change, we stay in this reactive mode. We stay tied to the business. Profits leaking out all over the place. We don't have time or energy to sort of fix those things, and we get sort of stalled out, and we get burnout, get tired of our business, and I'll say the turnover, the team. They're also frustrated. And then we think about what the other side of that coin looks like. Having predictable profits and sustainable
mhm.
pace of growth, sort of being on that journey that we talked about. That sounds exciting. Having a well-aligned team that runs without constant oversight, like you mentioned, you went away, there's a problem that got dealt with, like that. That's a beautiful thing. You can think about going on vacation and not having to plug in and check in. And speaking of, I'm flying out to Alaska tonight, and I'm going to be out in the wilderness. Even if the team tried to get a hold of me, there's no way to get a hold of me. So
Those are my
uh,
favorite
I
vacations.
know. And the cool thing is, I've got a great team, and they'll do a great job while I'm out.
Yeah.
And then we end up with a business that serves our lives, right? Not our lives serving the business. And so we think that's awfully important, where we really transition from overwhelmed operator to, being a visionary leader that can step back and enjoy their quality of life. So, Leslie, I think this work that you're doing is very, very important. Again, I encourage everybody to go check out yourbizrules.com/vital to get the free resources that Leslie's provided and learn more about all the good work that she's doing there.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast. I hope you found as much value in this conversation as I did. And if you did, I'd love for you to share it with someone who could benefit from the insights Leslie brought to the table today. Whether it's a fellow entrepreneur, a client, or a friend in the grind, let's spread the knowledge and lift each other up. If you're ready to take the next step and structure a tax strategy that actually works for you, not against you, our team is ready to help. Just head to vitalstrategies.com/tax. And let's start building your personalized plan to keep more of what you earn and grow your wealth with intention. And remember, you're a vital entrepreneur. You're vital because you're the backbone of our economy, creating opportunities, driving growth, and making an impact. You're vital to your family, creating abundance in every aspect of life. And you're vital to me because you're committed to growing your wealth, leading with purpose, and creating something truly great. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community of vital entrepreneurs. I appreciate you, and I look forward to having you back here next time on the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast, where we help entrepreneurs minimize their taxes, master wealth, and optimize their lives.